Hello, my name is Morgan, and I'm here to talk about this article, Early Truancy Intervention, and then the results of an evaluation using a regression discontinuity design. Let's go right into it. Truancy, that's kind of the main premise of this article. The reason why it's even worth doing is, as listed in the article, truancy has three main reasons why this even applies to us. First, as listed here, uh, truancy plays a role in all school districts, whether you're rural, urban, or any inner city. Those numbers listed there, those are the number on an average daily account of kids that are absent. So in rural settings, 6% of kids on any given day will be absent. Urban goes up to 8%. Inner city, you see that it doubles from rural to 12%. Um, and we see that this is a significant amount of the school population that's affected. Another reason why this matters is number two, truancy is often associated with more complex problems, uh, many of which can be tied or linked to domestic violence, serious mental illnesses, perhaps individually or in the family. Um, a lot of it, as you can probably conjecture, leads to school failure, grade retention, dropout, substance abuse, early sexual behavior, teen pregnancy, reliance on the welfare system, and often involvement in the judicial system or justice system. Now, this has a lot of problems for us as workers in the system. My study this year has been Big Brothers Big Sisters, and truancy is one of the red flags that they use for at-risk behavior or any of those just listed. The third reason why this article matters, why truancy is such a big deal, is that there's a lot of truancy preventative programs and then also during programs that try and diminish truancy available to youth, to adolescents. But at the time of this article's writing of 2011, there had been no rigorous research uh, done on these programs, and so they were saying we got to see if these programs are even if the efficacy even is happening, if is it yielding the results that we need. And so that's the three main reasons why this truancy article really matters. Different evaluation questions that they're trying to figure out with this program. First, does the TASC, or the Truancy Assessment and Service Center, does it actually reduce the rate of truancy among high-risk students by the end of the school year? Now, this time requirement on here is important to the evaluation questions. And when we get into the methodology, we'll see how this plays in. But that's the real question here. Does the TASC really reduce truancy? And as you'll tell, these three questions kind of build off of each other. The second one, to what types of services are high-risk students typically referred? So if it does reduce truancy, when we notice it, what services are these students being typically referred to, or is there even a typical service? And then if there is a significant treatment effect, what proportion of the variance or difference in the change in truancy rate, how can it be can it be explained by relevant risk factors including race, gender, age, previous grade retention, enrollment in special education, and successful case closure? So are there other factors that are playing into this truancy reduction? And that's the hope of these evaluation questions. Is there really a difference here? And that leads us to our methodology. In the study of the program, those who participated, they took a group of 869 students. Half of them were male, half female, from an urban city, and put them through these three different questions to see if they could figure out, hey, is this TASC program actually working? Are there particular things that they're referenced to, and are there other factors contributing to this? Part of the sample, part of the population, younger students are overrepresented. It states in the article, younger students were also overrepresented with more than half in kindergarten and fifth grade, the number being 59%. Um, and so those are the list of the participants. The way that they did this study, though, was through an RD quasi-experimental design, which has a lot of benefits. With this RD design, there is no random assignment. It's impossible to have random assignment, especially with something internal like things that might motivate truancy. Um, and so what they did with this is they had a cutoff point. This is where they were able to decide who was going to be the control and who was going to be the treatment group. So they assigned kids scores based on 2 years of data that they had taken and use a computer to assign the score. The cutoff date or the cutoff number was 27. So any of the children with a composite risk score of 27 or higher were considered at high risk for more truancy in the future, and they were placed in the TASC intensive case management program, or the treatment group is what we had assigned them as. But any of the children with a composite score that was less than 26, they were deemed that they were at a lower risk for continued truancy, and their only intervention was a warning letter, and then included with that was a copy that they needed to keep attending to be in accordance with the compulsory attendance law. And so this RD design really does a lot of good things, although there is a lot of limitations to the RD design. One of those being, in particular, the designs are concerned with a misspecification of the model due to non-linearity and interaction effects. And so it's just to make sure that the pre and post test measures are addressed correctly, that the interaction between the effects are properly analyzed. Of course, one of the other limitations to this sort of design is many people would say the random assignment, but with this sort of social work, this is really one of the only options and has a lot of viability to it. With the analysis, while they were conducting this, they right from the get-go, there were two significant outliers that they made sure to remove from there. And that'll lead us right to what were the results. So what are the results of this program test to see if the intervention actually yields the results that they were hoping for? To summarize it, just for time, the control group, where they just sent out the letter, truancy rates remained pretty much identical to the first tested for cutoff levels, so that 26 or lower on that grade point scale. Truancy's about stayed the same, which is what we'd anticipate. In the intervention group, though, truancy in the treatment group had a significant decline, and when we say significant, we mean statistically significant. There was about a 1.9% reduction of truancy for high-risk students. Now, that probably sounds pretty meager, a 1.9% reduction. If we put that in the context, though, of other programs who are trying to reduce truancy, one other program, the Family and Community Involvement Program, they saw an identical 1.9% decrease in truancy, but it took them 3 years for that student to receive that, versus this TASC intervention that only took 1 year. So in the context of that, it not only is statistically significant, but contextually significant too. The question about can the variance be attributed to other things, they found in their study that successful case closure was also associated with the reduction in truancy. A side note, the intervention was less effective with non-white children than with those who had previously retained. One other thing that we want to make sure that we point out is they found that the higher of their pre-program assessment scores, so we had 26 being the cutoff for the lower end and 27 and higher being for the intervention treatment, those who are at the higher end of that number. Like there was one student, his score was 116. The higher the child's pre-program assignment score, the less they benefited from participating in the TASC program. Um, but on the other hand, if you were closer to the median, so let's say there's a child who was 27 or 28, that was their assigned score, they saw truancy reduction rates, some of them as high as 6%. So remember, this is just an average, but we have to take that with how it fits in with everything else. Children whose scores were 2 standard deviations above the cutoff point actually showed an increase in the rate of truancy after receiving the TASC intervention. So let's just remember that the further you were away from the standard deviation, TASC might have actually increased your likelihood for truancy, or at least it might have appeared that way with this study. So what are the implications for us? Well, I suppose at the very minimum we see that at least this program has efficacy. It works. The intervention is working, and it can reduce truancy. Some of the other implications that we have to take in context here is that this study does not assess whether poorer case outcomes among students at greater risk were associated with insufficient or improper case management, lack of community-based resources, or some other combination of those two. We have to remember that there might be other factors playing in that we might not have been able to see in this. So these findings, they just reinforce the importance of an on-site school social worker who can identify and work with and respond to student and family needs and ensure that families are being properly linked to a community services, especially in schools, in resource-poor neighborhoods, the inner city where the numbers were as high as 12%, or the urban. Rural will need this also, but we can definitely tell where the truancy rates are higher, where these implications will really have their weight. So overall, from this program evaluation of whether or not the TASC intervention actually yields results, we find that it does. In my personal finding, is it worth the amount of money that it takes to run a program like this for a slight decrease in truancy among the high risk, somewhere around 1.6%. Perhaps over calloused of me, I would say it's not worth the inputs. I don't know if the outcomes are worth those inputs if we're looking at the logic model. But that would just be my opinion. As far as the article is concerned, I was really impressed. There's quite a bit of review of the literature at the beginning, which is always beneficial to help me get some background on what's going on and what's already been reported. I didn't see as much of a need for this article as perhaps they tried to convey at the beginning in their introduction, how needed this article was. I felt like the results of previous truancy program studies had spoke for themselves, but I do see the benefit of the RD design. I felt, and I'd talked to one of my other professors about this earlier, that there's often almost a need to defend whenever somebody uses an RD design, perhaps because it's been a little banged up from others because it's not randomly assigned, the participants aren't. But they spend quite a bit of their article time. I think I even counted collectively almost 2.5 pages of it defending the RD design, instead of just assuming that those reading it would understand the context of it. But perhaps that's how naive I am with some of these research articles. I had done my own research on the RD design, and I felt comfortable with that path that they had taken and the limitations that I knew were there, but I just felt like they were on the defense a lot. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I felt it is very relevant to me, very relevant to what I'm studying, and something that I'll kind of keep in my back pocket so that I can use in the future. So overall, that's the article, Early truancy intervention results from an evaluation using a regression discontinuity design. Thanks.